Well, today I'm going to be working on a doll. So we'll see how this turns out. So I'm going to use this air dry modeling clay just to show you how I made this mouse doll. However, I actually did mine out of porcelain and fired it in the kiln, but you can do this with air dry clay. Or a lot of people use milliput. So you could use either or. Um, this modeling clay is pretty sturdy and actually would work really well. Probably not my favorite color, but this is all I had. So basically what I'm doing is I'm just going to grab out a little bit and I'm going to show you the basic form of how I actually made this doll. And it's pretty easy and straightforward. So the first part is you just kind of bend it into like a little snake. So that's kind of what he starts out looking like, is like a little snake kind of shape. So you want the nose to be fairly narrow, and then I'm actually making a little cup on the bottom of it, just like you see on normal porcelain dolls that have cloth bodies. And basically, I'm just making sure that it's not too thick here. And of course, like if this was going to be the permanent one that I used, I would have spent a lot more time on the bottom of it. So basically, I'm using my fingers to get the shape kind of right. I've got the nose a little bit too thick, so I'm pulling off a little bit of the excess and just kind of giving it a nice little rounded shape. Do you see how that looks? It kind of looks like a serpent from the side, but don't worry about it. It's not going to stay like that forever. So you can see the bottom has got kind of like a cuff of where you would put the cloth body in, and that's your basic shape for a mouse. And if you look online at photographs of real mice, that's very close to what their little heads actually look like. So now I'm going to be putting in some of the details. So first of all, I've got a little tiny piece of clay that I'm going to kind of shape into an ear. You want to make sure both of the ears are about equal amount of clay, and you kind of make it kind of rounded, and then you press it against your finger to make it kind of cup shaped. And you don't want it perfectly round because you want it to look a little bit crinkled. And so you got the cup shape happening, and then you just kind of place it like this on the back side of the head and smooth it out with your fingers so that the back of the ear blends onto the back of the head. And just kind of, do you see how I'm pinching it together a little bit, making it a little bit cup shaped? And there you go. So now I'm just kind of smoothing that on. And you don't want them to look exactly identical. You want them to look a little bit rough because a real mouse is not going to have absolutely perfect ears. So now I'm going to take two little tiny pieces and I'm going to roll them out and I'm going to turn them into little tiny balls. You can see here. That one's a little bit too big. Let me just make that a little bit smaller. And you want them to be equal size. Those are going to be the eyeballs. So now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this little tool and make a little V shape at the very front. And that will be his little nose. So I'm just doing a little tiny V. And if you don't have a tool like this, you could use anything, like even a kitchen knife, to make that little shape. And then I'm going to take this little pokey tool and I'm just going to go in and do two little nostrils. You can see a little closer. And now I'm going to take my little stick here and I'm going to poke 2 holes into either side, and those will be the eyeball sockets. So then I'm going to take those little round balls that I made and press them in. So see here, I've got them both pressed in quite nicely. And there you go. That's your basic mouse. So, and it really does look realistic once it's done up, you'll see. So I'm just going to the back of the ears here and making sure that they're blended nicely onto the head. Now the next step is I want to make a mouth. So I'm just going to use this little tool to press in underneath the nose and just kind of press around it. You could use even a steak knife. I mean, anything would work for this. And you're just pressing in really deep and making a little mouth. There you go. So now I've got that. I want to go in and open it up a little bit. And you could give him any kind of personality. You could give him a smile. You could leave the mouth gaping open. I like the way this one looks like this. And then I've got this little wire brush tool. And I'm just going to go all the way around and use the wire brush on it just to give it a nice textured surface. If you don't have a wire brush, just using any kind of pointy tool to engrave like little lines all over it so that it looks like fur. At this point, it looks a little bit weird, but you'll see once I show you the fired one that I made out of porcelain, how absolutely realistic this actually looks by doing this, just dragging this little brush all over the clay. It actually really does add a lot of realism to this little project. So there you go. That's our little guy done. Now, the only thing that I did different on the one that I did out of porcelain is I went in underneath the nose and I put a little split right at the top of his lip, which made it look like he's got 2 teeth. So there's the fired one that I made out of porcelain. And as you can see, it's pretty identical to the one that we just made out of the air dry clay. So air dry clay, you can buy it at the dollar store, really super cheap. And so these are the legs that I've made, and these are the hands. And then I also made this tail, which I didn't end up using because it ended up being way too long. So here's the color paints that I'm going to be using. I've got black, I've got red, I've got neon pink, which I didn't end up using. I've got a nice burnt umber, which is a dark chocolate brown, and I've got white. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take my little paint dish and I'm going to fill it up with all of the colors that I need. So because I'm going to be doing shading on this, I'm going to fill up at least 4 pieces of this little container with white paint. And of course, nothing turns out perfect when you're trying to do it on camera. So I've got white paint in 4 of them. And then I've got a little bit of burnt umber, which is the dark brown. And I've got a little bit of red, which I'm going to need for inside the mouth and the ears and the nose. And what else do I have here? Oh, I did take some neon pink out, even though I didn't end up using any of it. And then the last color that I have in this palette is black. And unfortunately, this black is way too thick, so I had to dig it out of the bottle with my paintbrush. And then I'm going to have to water it down a little bit with a little tiny bit of water just to make it so that it's usable. So, first step is I'm going to go in and I'm going to take the black and I'm going to actually paint his eyeballs with pure black paint. So, yeah, it turns out really good when you do the eyeballs in black. And then after, before you finish it, you're going to put little tiny white crescents in it so that it looks more realistic. But I'm going to start off by just painting the eyeballs black. I've sped it up a little bit so that you don't have to watch me in detail painting these eyeballs. So you can see here I've got a pretty fine brush that I'm using, and it works pretty nicely. So now I'm going to take that little fine paintbrush, and I'm just going to go inside of the mouth so that it makes it look like the mouth is nice and deep. And I'm just going to fill the cavity of the interior of the mouth completely with black paint. And next I'm going to be using the red, and again I'm just going to be going into the inside of the cavity of the mouth and now painting over the black with some red. And I mean, I'm not going crazy detailed like with tongue and everything inside of it. That's not at all what I'm doing. And so, I mean, I'm just making it so that when you look at it, you can tell some parts of the inside of the mouth are red. And now I'm just looking at this, and I want his chest to be white. So I'm just taking some, even though the porcelain is pure white, I'm taking some paint and I'm just painting underneath his chin and his little chest and just going over that with some white acrylic paint. My next step is I'm going to be creating some pink paint. So I'm just taking just a little tiny dab of the red, and I'm mixing it in with the white acrylic, and I'm creating some pink. So I'm going to go ahead and do not only his nose, but actually his entire top of his muzzle in this pink shade. And I'm just going to be doing like different layers of it so that it's not like all the exact same color pink. So as you can see, I'm just toning it down a little bit with some white. And I don't know if the lighting is as good as what it could be, but you can see here that I'm doing it much later than what I originally started it out with. I'm also using this same tones to do the insides of his ears. So you can see I'm just brushing some pink onto the insides of his ears. So now I've got his little muzzle and the insides of his ears done. So now I'm going to be taking some more red with a really tiny brush, and I'm going to go inside of his actual nostrils with the red, and then kind of painting where the little V is that we originally put on there, and then I'm blending it with the end of my fingertip so that it's not like pure red, it's just kind of mixed in with the pink. And you can see here I'm just kind of grabbing some more pink with my fingertip, and I'm just kind of blending that in. So, because I don't want it to look like he's got a bloody nose. So, and now I'm taking some brown paint, and I'm adding it to the white, and I'm going to paint everywhere where I feel the fur should be brown. And the whole secret to doing this is you don't want to use the same tone of brown everywhere. So I'm going to just basically paint the thing in this basic color. And then once it's all completely covered in this kind of tan color that I've mixed up, then I'll go in with different shades of this umber paint so that it doesn't look like it's flat. You want to give it a little bit of life. So basically what we're going to be doing is we're going to be going in and dry brushing with different shading. So once again, I've sped it up so that you don't have to watch me paint every every single second. Um, so I'm just kind of going around. I'm using basically that same shade of brown pretty much everywhere. I mean, I'm adding more brown and adding more white to that little pile. It you can see it's not perfect. So now I'm going in and I'm actually adding more burnt ember, and I'm going to be giving it a little bit more color. So you can see it's much darker the second time I go around, and I'm just kind of going over the whole thing. So I didn't go real close to his eyes. I want to leave a little bit of a white circle around his eyes, but not as big as what you can see here. So I want to get a little bit closer to those eyeballs. Um, so you can see I'm just kind of adding a little bit darker brown all the way around, but I don't want to completely cover it. I still want to see some of that light brown through it. So that's why I say it's kind of like dry brushing. So, and see, I'm going much closer to the eyeballs now. And I'm just kind of going to go around it with this dark color now. Once again, I've sped it up so that you don't have to watch every paint stroke in detail. You can see I go a little heavier right behind where the crease of the ear would be, and just kind of filling it all in, and I'm giving him a little bit more white in the front. I later decide that I don't like it, and I add more dark in. So, I mean, it's just trial and error, right? My suggestion to you is you just keep on going over it with various shades of this same color, and eventually you'll get your desired look to it. I've just slowed down a little bit here just so you can see what it looks like as I go around the little eyeballs. I want to kind of keep a little white circle around the eyeballs, so I've probably gone on with a few different shades. So now I've got black, and I'm taking his little feet, and in between the grooves of his toes, I'm putting black inside there. And that's just so that when it is finally painted, then the toes will be well defined. So I'm just going in there. Actually, I'm using the brown, not the black, sorry. I'm just going in there and using the dark brown straight up. And then I'm going to go over and paint it with the lightened brown that's got the white acrylic mixed into it, and you'll see the toes will be super well defined. Other than pre-painting in between the toes in a darker color, the same technique applies for the little arms and legs. Just layering it with different colors, so different shades of that same brown. So there's my head completed. You can see I put little white crescents on the eyes, and I painted the teeth pure white. Then I used this sealant over everything. So it's a UV resistant matte sealant by Krylon, and I sprayed the limbs as well as the head just to make sure that my paint is not going to scratch off after years of touching this little guy. Then after that was dried for an hour, then I used this Mod Podge Dimensional Magic. And what this does is it's like super glossy and shiny. And I'm going to paint over the little eyeballs. And this actually takes quite a few hours to dry. So I didn't touch this again for 24 hours after doing this. So I basically put this onto each of the eyeballs because I want the eyes to be extremely shiny. So, and it actually, it puts such a thick layer of shiny gloss on it. It actually looks amazing when it's done. So right now it's kind of milky, but you'll see when it's dry it'll look much better. So it's now the next day. The eyeballs are dry, and now I don't want this mouse to be more than 4 inches tall. So I've got to figure out how I'm going to make the stuffed body. So I've got the little feet here, and that's basically how tall I want my mouse to be when she is done. I believe she's going to be a girl. I end up making a skirt for her, so I guess she's a girl. So that's how long I want the arms to be, and that's how tall I want her to be. So from there, I decide how much fabric I need to cut. So I've got some white muslin fabric, and I'm just going to measure it out and decide how big to make it. I'm fighting a bit of a cold, so voicing over this isn't easy. Basically, the body is just going to be a little square pillow. That's how you do it. And so I'm just going to tear this because it's muslin and it tears perfectly. And then I'm just going to cut a little square off of this. So you can see I'm cutting at 3 inches, which is way bigger than what I actually need it to be. But that's okay. I can use the scraps that come off of it. So, so basically I'm just kind of folding it. You can see how wide the shoulders have to be. So that's about how wide I want to make it. So I'll just cut off the excess, which I will be able to use for the legs. Not a problem. And there you go. That's my little body. Now, I've got it quite a bit longer than I want it to be, so I'm going to have to end up trimming that down. And so I fold it in half, and I'm going to sew it all the way around. So, and I am going to sew it by hand. And I won't bore you with sewing it. I'm just showing you that I sewed it in half and then sewed it across the top. And now I'm turning it inside out. It's like a little pillowcase, using my little stick here to poke out the little corners. And there you go. That's going to be my little body. So you can see that's like the perfect size for what I need. And my next step is I'm going to have to get some fiber fill out and stuff it. Back in the old days, they used to stuff these kind of dolls, these porcelain dolls, with sawdust, which is really unusual. So I prefer to use fiber fill. So now I've got it stuffed. Just going to turn the edges in, and then I'm just going to sew it across the top, and then my body will be done. So there you go. That's what she's going to look like. So I'll just go off camera and I'll sew the top of that closed. And now it's completely done. And you can see that's what it's going to look like. So I've got a seam down the back, and that will be towards the back of the doll. So yeah, so that works out pretty good. Yeah, I'm quite pleased with how well that seems to fit. So now the next step is to get the arms and legs done. So beginning with the legs, I'm going to use the leftover fabric from when I made the top of the body. Just going to fold these pieces in half, and then I'm just going to sew them up so that this little leg can fit into the inside of it. So basically, you can see that's how long I want the leg to be, and I've sewn them both, and then I'm going to go back in and trim it. Once they're trimmed, then you have to turn them inside out, and then you actually glue the little legs inside of it, and then you also tighten it. Do you see how there's like a little kind of circle around, or an indent around the top of the legs and the hands? You actually take some string and you tie it around there as well. So I'm just showing you how fiddly this is. You have to turn the actual leg inside out. So I'm using a little toothpick here, and I'm actually shoving it into the piece of fabric, and I'm turning it inside out, and that will make my little leg. So there you go. It's quite fiddly to work with stuff that's this small when it comes to sewing, but the results turn out pretty good. So there you go. That's leg number 1 made. And, oh no, leg number 2. So there's both of my legs. So now I've glued the legs in, I've sewn them in, I've made a long tube, which will be the arms, and sewed the hands on and glued the hands on. And then I will sew this long tube that has both arms to the top of the body, and then I will glue the head on. So when I go to glue the head on, I'm going to be gluing it on with tacky glue, but I'm also going to be using some stronger glue as well. For stronger, more permanent hold, I use this E6000, and I also use tacky glue. So I use both glues. So now the little girl is done, and you can see she's all glued together, and I'm quite pleased with how she turned out. I think her fur looks super realistic. I think her face looks pretty realistic. I'm quite pleased with her. Have started to make some clothes. I made these little bloomers. I did make this little skirt for her, and then I tried to alter this little 1/12 scale top, but something about it isn't quite right. So I'm going to have to go back to the drawing board for a new top for her. But overall, I'm pretty pleased. If you enjoyed today's video and would like to help support my channel, you can do so by buying me a coffee. Just go to www.buymeacoffee.com/Lisa Dobo. I'd like to thank everyone that has helped to support my channel by going to buymeacoffee.com. It's appreciated more than you know. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please consider subscribing. It's free to do so, and it really does help my channel grow. I hope you enjoyed today's tutorial, and I hope at least some of you try and make one of these little mice. They actually are pretty easy to make. A little bit time consuming, but a lot of fun, and I'm really pleased with the results. It's the first time I've ever tried something like this, so I'm quite happy with the outcome. Not so happy with the clothes that I made this poor little mouse, but I will get her decently dressed, don't worry. Also, please hit that notification bell, and then that way you'll know every time I upload a new video. And I love reading your comments below, and I try and answer each and every one of you. As always, have the best day ever.